Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning.
A podcast where we share with you great insights about everything family from over 30 years of parenting 7 kids and over a decade of equipping parents through our Crazy Cool Family ministry.
So let us inspire and equip you to build your best family.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, we are going to talk about grandparents.
Oh, that's my new favorite role, being a granny, a yaya, and a pops. Yaya and pops. That's what we are.
Yes, and we are entering that phase.
We are fully entered. We have 8 grandchildren at the moment. We are fully entered into that phase.
Just an FYI, we've had 4 new babies since August. All 4 of our daughters had babies August, November.
I think it was July. She was born in July.
Oh, yes, it's July. Yeah, that's right. The very end of July. So
Yeah.
July, November, and then what?
March and April.
Yeah. So we doubled.
Evened it up. 4 boys, 4 girls.
Yeah,
so cute. 2 boys on the front end, 4 girls in the middle, and 2 boys on the back end.
So we are experiencing firsthand grandparenting, and we talk to parents all the time. And actually, it's so interesting. We get a lot of email and a lot of inquiries from grandparents.
And from parents about grandparents.
Yeah.
And so we've got a couple different perspectives we're going to talk about
So
today.
we're going to talk about today from a grandparenting perspective, what kind of issues they have and or what we see. And then also from parents wanting to make sure that the relationship with the grandparents is the same. And so really, I think this podcast is designed to try to bring harmony and unity into the parent-grandparent relationship. And so that because it extends and because like we want to have unity in our family, we also want to have unity with our extended family. So let's start out with the grandparents. So we get a lot of emails, discussions, whatever that we have about grandparents. There's a couple of things I think I hear a lot, and you can jump in here too. One of them is just being very concerned about the culture of today and how any child, they don't understand technology in many ways, and very concerned about how kids are encountering the technology and the culture of the day. And the other thing I would say I hear a lot of is being concerned about how their kids are parenting their grandkids.
Right.
And so, and I actually wanted to bring into light a ministry that's fairly new, maybe, called Legacy Coalition, and it's the one of the only ones I know. In fact, they say helping grandparents have a greater spiritual impact on their families. That's their vision.
Okay.
And so in there, it talks about how there's this, again, it's the world's view versus the kingdom view. They say in there, it's that the culture says it's time to take it easy and enjoy spoiling your grandchildren. So that's another thing we hear from grandparents a lot is, it's my job to do whatever I want with the grandkids, and then I just send them back home, and then I don't have to worry about them.
Right.
And so the parents are like, that's great, but when they come back home, they're a mess
Right.
for a couple of days. And so what is the right balance there? And even, should a grandparent parent the grandchild? How much do they invest in parenting? Because, sometimes there's a difference in the way maybe the grandparent's too easy, but we also see sometimes where the grandparent is too harsh in the mind of the parent. The parent has a different parenting style than the grandparent, and they don't like that conflict either.
And so, okay, so if we're talking to grandparents,
Which we are.
then
But we're taking the grandparents, we're seeing it from the grandparents' view right now.
Yeah. So to speak to the grandparents when it comes, like what have we discovered and found as grandparents, and how to encourage grandparents?
Yeah. So I think that first of all, I'm assuming that's a question you're giving to me, is try to go along into the parenting of your child.
Okay.
Because they are the parents and you are the grandparents. And so you have, you used to be a parent.
Right.
Now you're not a parent. You have a different role. You are a grandparent. And so when it doesn't mean you can't spoil them, it doesn't mean you can't be different. There is a different role, but I think sometimes, again, it's just like everything else. What if you take the selfishness out of it? And what if you take what I want to do and look at the greater good and look and see where God's involved?
Yeah, I agree. I think the remembering your role as a grandparent and a parent, remember that there's a dynamic there, and you are still parenting your child to some degree, even as they parent. And so how are you going to honor them and support them in their role as parents? So, for example, let's say that your children are not feeding your grandchildren sugar. Then for you to come along beside and to, just fill them up with ice cream and gummy bears and all the things, you're actually dishonoring your child. And so what would it take to just learn what it is that your child wants for your grandchild? Or maybe they come to your house and they watch unlimited TV or play with unlimited technology, but in their home they've got boundaries set. And so what would it take for you to honor what your children are doing when it comes to their children? And so I know that that's not any fun as grandparents, because it's so much fun to give them something like that. And so what I would want to say, the best way to balance that is to honor and value what your child is doing when it comes to raising their children. But you can do it at minimum, instead of a bowl of ice cream, or or ask the parents permission. Hey, I bought some healthy popsicles. And that's what I found that I'm doing. And one of the main reasons is because I want to support my children, but I also don't want their children to be wild. I mean, and when it comes to sugar, I see even the results of that. And so what would it take as a grandparent to support your children in what they are doing, seeing and doing, and still getting to do what you want to do by asking them?
Maybe another way to think about this, maybe that's related, is how much do you expand the freedoms? It's not about,
good.
it's you. I believe that grandparents should be able to, it should be fun when they come to your house. It should be, for example, when my grandsons came over the other day, we went and played miniature golf, and we had a blast doing it, and we got some ice cream. And so, I mean, all that's healthy and is good. But I think that there is this almost this right that grandparents think they have of, I get to do whatever I want and you can't tell me. I raised you and I've earned this right. And it's like, where's that? Where is that?
Well, it actually causes a confusion with the child. Because, well, Yaya said I can. Well, Pop said I can. And it just is like, we don't want to ever be put in a situation where they put us in a higher authority than their parent. We always want to defer to, well, what does mommy say? Well, what would mommy say? Would mommy say this is okay? What does daddy say?
And I think that, my point there is that it should be where grandparents are different. And I'll tell you another way I think you should be different in just a minute if your kids as parents aren't like this, but is to just expand it, make it fun, but just not over the top and not so different that it becomes almost damaging. And the second thing is that you get to be light and life to your grandchildren. You're not in a role where you have to parent them all the time.
The burden, yeah. So
you don't, if they mess up while they're around you, big deal. I remember, John Eldridge, who wrote Wild at Heart and stuff, talking about when he was a boy, he had trouble with his dad, but his grandfather worked on a ranch, or he had some cows and things, and he just made John feel like he would take him to where he had his other friends there, and he would say, John did this. This is my partner as I'm doing the ranching this summer, and John just felt like he was 10 feet tall. He let him handle things and do stuff, and he praised him. And so when we become the voice of like the Legacy Coalition site says, you are in a unique position of influence.
Right.
Think about that. You're in a unique position of influence, and you are important to your grandchildren. When you come, you get to be, and if you become light and life to them, how many kids do you know? How many parents do you know? Maybe it's you that they just remember, oh, yeah, I love seeing my grandpa because, he smelled like this and he did this and he let me do this. What if you're that kind of grandparent?
Yeah, and so as grandparents, we get to have a perspective that comes from experience. And we get to see that 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old's not always going to act like that because we watched our children grow out of it. And so we don't have to come in as grandparents with the heavy hand and punish.
Yeah, the helicopter parenting and all that.
We don't have to come in and do that because it's not our responsibility. But also we have a perspective that it doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter that they spilled their water on the floor and broke the glass. It doesn't matter. And so we don't have to punish and do all the things. We actually have the space and the time and the perspective to redirect in a loving way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around, my grandkids before, and they've messed up and they've done something and they look at me terrified that I'm going to overreact. And as a mother, that exact situation would have made me overreact and freak out. So I know that that's what my daughters had done too, because you could see it in their eyes. But as the grandma who's not with them all the time, I'm not exhausted. I'm not having to train them and mold them or whatever that is. I can come in and say, oh, Betty, that's okay. Well, we'll just clean that up. Here, I'm going to clean up the glass part and you clean up the liquid part. Yeah. And it's just, we get to do that as grandparents, and I love that.
Well, and so as we talk about grandparents, think about it from this perspective. What's your purpose as a grandparent? Not what do I get to do because I'm a grandparent, but how am I going to help build life, love, hope, joy, all these things into this 3-year-old, into this 7-year-old, into this 18-year-old, whatever it is. You have a role. You have an important role in their lives. What's that role look like? What does God say that role looks like?
Yeah. And so one idea I would like to place into that when you're asking yourself that is, I think one of the most valuable things we can do as a grandparent is to treat our grandchildren special. Because they are. I mean, God hand knit them perfectly and beautifully together with all their little qualities. And sometimes their parents, and I know I did with my children, see those qualities as nuisances and annoyances and irritations. But as grandparents, we can see that very same thing and value it and appreciate it and think it's the most clever thing in the whole world. And it goes back to building identity. I think that as grandparents, we have this unique opportunity to build identity with our grandchildren because we see them from a different perspective.
Yeah. And think about this. As grandparents, we I think this is, depending on the order we do, doesn't matter. We just did a podcast on summer, and we were talking about how in summer you have time. Okay. In grandparenting, you have time. And so what if you just listen to them more? What if I was looking here in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 18, and it talks about teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. It's just along the way. It's what we tell parents to do, but parents are busier and stressed and all those things, and we get that. But as grandparents, we don't have to be. They come over. We want them to come over. Right. We want to see them. And then, and if you're
after they play and make a mess, we want them to go home.
Yeah. But I mean, so often the grandparent, I think, thinks they need to help the parent by, getting onto them more, or they get annoyed and things like that. It's like, what if what's your purpose in grandparenting, and what an opportunity you have to be an influence, a godly influence. Maybe your kids aren't following the Lord like you would like them to. Mm-hmm. Guess what? You get to be that. Instead of griping about their parents,
right?
What if you just become that light and life to them so that they see the love of Jesus in you?
I love that. And so another point, maybe our last point on speaking to grandparents, is to take your hands off Like so many times when a child gets in the room and you've got the mom and the dad and the grandmother and the grandfather, and if there's an aunt or an uncle, all of a sudden there's now 6 adults that are telling that child what to do. And by the end of the evening, that child has a huge meltdown because they've been bossed around. I mean, bottom line, that's what we do.
With good intentions.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because we're the adult and they're the child and we're all molding and shaping and we can say all the great things, but reality is they have a huge meltdown because 6 people have been telling them what to do all day. Mm-hmm. And so I just encourage you as grandparents to just keep your mouth shut. Let the parents parent. Let them, I mean, and if you want to say anything, say it positively, say it encouraging. If the child's, running around yelling and screaming, you can say, oh my goodness, I just love it when you play quietly, or something like that. But you don't say, sit down, be quiet. Don't do that, because I guarantee 4 other people are going to say that to them.
Yeah. So with that segue, let's talk about parents, because sometimes, even in those situations, we're visiting our kids come over, and it's a different, one of the things let's talk about when parents, grandparents, and grandkids are all together first.
Right.
That's a different world for the child, mm-hmm. and realizing that now the child is in it. They're out of their house. That they may eat more sugar or whatever it is. Everything's different, and so.
And if the child's intelligent, they're going to learn how to play the parents against, or play the grandparents against the parents, so they can get their way. And so know that dynamic is happening, and know that you and your kids are on the same team, or you're on the same team with your parents.
Well, and so parents, we encourage you. Hopefully you have a relationship with your parents where this can happen, to have conversations about that. Just like if you were to leave them with your grandparents, you would give them instructions. Here's when they go to bed. Here's what they do. They like to read these books. Even having discussions about how everyone's going to interact together when you're over, and mm-hmm. Where's everybody going to sleep, and what are we going to do, and who's going to be, I know, Suzanne, when you were going through this with the daughters, it was really, when kids come over to our house and all the families come over, it's a lot. And so, it can be really overwhelming to realize parents, it can be that your mom and dad may really want you guys to come over, but it can be super stressful for them too. And maybe they don't know what to do as well. So what if you have a conversation about it?
Oh, for sure. Exactly. I think that parents, your parents, so the grandparents want to hear from you. As sitting in the role of the grandparent now, I want to know what you do and don't want from me. If you want me to spoil your kids and buy them a toy, or if you'd rather not have any more toys in your house, or if you don't want bright, loud battery operated toys, but you want, natural wood toys.
Want a drum set.
If you don't want your little girls to wear halter tops and little mini skirts, then I want to know that, I want to know what it is that you like, because if I'm going to buy things for them, I want it to be things that are going to bless you and not burden you. And so I just want to encourage you parents to talk to your parents and tell them. And if it's a tough situation, if it's going to be a tough conversation, then maybe even start it with that. Hey, listen, I know this is a tough conversation. I know that you want what's best for me, and I know you're trying to help. And so build your parents up, knowing that it's a new role for them too, and they want to do it right, and they want to do it good. And so if you just build them up and tell them what a good job they're doing as a grandparent and how much your children really enjoy them, then go in with that. And this is how you can really help us, is if you don't feed them junk food all the time, and you don't let them watch unlimited TV, but you do read them stories. They love stories. And if you'll sit on the floor and play with them, because I don't have time to sit on the floor and play with them. And so if you'll do that, that'll just fill their little love cup up.
And sometimes, like we've had parents talk to us about how the grandparents get onto their kids a lot, and they believe they came from maybe came from a culture, kids are seen and not heard, came from a culture of you keep getting on them so they get it right. And the grandparents think they are helping.
They do.
As they are constant. And the parents feel like, oh my goodness, it seems like it either goes one way. The problems go one way or another. Either the grandparent is like, I'm going to give them all the ice cream they want,
right?
Or
no boundaries.
They're all over them all the time. And so, what would you advise a parent who is having that trouble the other way, where the grandparents are getting on their kids. And really, we've even seen instances where the kids don't want to go to the grandparents or don't want to, because that's so different than their own home environment.
Yeah, for sure. No, I've had a sweet little mom share with me, about that very same thing, is that my children don't want to hang out with their grandparents because their grandparents are on their case all the time. And so just to talk to you parents, I think that if you'll just say to your parents, listen, you did a great job as a parent. I turned out great, right? And so let me parent my child. Let me do that.
I want you to enjoy the grandchildren.
Yes, if you have a problem, come to me and let me be the bad guy. Let me be the one. And so you're telling this to your parents so that then they know, okay, the child, because they know that the child is going to be redirected. And it's hard, and in the moment you just want to do that, because reality is adults mold and shape and redirect little people. I mean, that's just where it's hardwired into us. I have yet to see, if you go to the park and a kid's doing wrong, a stranger's going to tell the kid to do it right. I mean, so it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. A little person's stepping out of line, an adult's going to come in and fix it. And so it's not your parents' fault that they're doing that. It's all they know. It's all we know. And so if you come with a loving way and say, listen, let me be the bad guy. Let me be the one to get onto the kid. Let me redirect. Let me punish. Let me do all that. You can be the encourager. You can be the listener. You can be the fun guy. You can be the one. And there will be they will mess up, and that's okay. And I know, and how I counseled this mom is I said, okay, when that happens, sometimes it's harder for an older person to change than a younger person. So you just pull your child aside and you just talk to them. And you just say, well, what do you want to say? No, keep going. Well, and you just encourage your child, hey, listen, we love you. We just want what's best for you. And Granny thinks that, it's better if you, eat all your broccoli tonight. And I mean, and that's okay. And so,
or sometimes, like, one of the things that comes up is they may think they're things, usually when you have a house full of young kids, things are not, they're destroyable. The house is going to, but the grandparents may have nice things. Mm-hmm. So when they come over, don't touch that. Or, they think that they need to control them a lot more than where they're coming from. And so just telling that child, hey, we honor our grandparents by respecting their things. Mm-hmm. So when we go over there in our house, so much of it is talking to the child and saying, because what if that child's going over there and you're not going to be there as a parent?
Right.
So you coach them and you say, hey, when you go over to Granny's, she likes her things.
Right.
And so, we're going to have places that you can play. And maybe you talk to your mother, maybe it's the mother or who have the mother or the father who's particular, and says, where's a place they can just play in your house? Mm-hmm. Can we set this up to where this is a place they can go? And then you coach the child and you say, hey, when you're in this room, this is like home.
Yeah.
But when you're in the living room, you got to be more careful.
And just know that it's good for everybody. It's good for it's good for us old people to have our boundaries pushed. Mm-hmm. It's good for your young people to learn boundaries. I mean, that's the real world. That is it. So anytime you have this kind of interaction and it feels like it's bad, I just want to tell you it's not, it's good. Yeah. Relationship is always better than any kind of conflict that you're having. And so press into that conflict to restore and build the relationship.
Except there are some times. So parents, what we've said the grandparents is look at your purpose and don't be about you, be about the purpose for the child and the purpose for your kids, and have fun with it. But look in that. For the parents, we're saying work it out, try to talk about it. But sometimes there becomes difficulties on both sides that the parent is just not, it is a difficult situation where maybe the mom or the grandparent, the grandmom or grandfather or grandmother won't listen and won't do things. Or, let's talk about that, for example. Should parents sometimes put boundaries because they feel like they're taking their kid into a very negative situation? Maybe the morals aren't there, or there's conflict, or there's yelling, or there's, very significant things. What you're saying is work on the relationship and have some boundary and have some flexibility, if you will. But sometimes it goes outside of that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because reality is, if your child does not feel safe anywhere, do not put them in that situation. They're, once again, they're a child. And so they will, by nature of being a child, they will submit. And so if your child does not feel safe, then, don't do it. I mean, whether it's in school, it's in a daycare, it's anywhere. I mean, I love what's being taught there now is they're in society today, they're teaching children to have their own voice and to say, no, I don't like that. Let's say somebody's tickling your child, and you empower your child to say, please stop, I don't like that. In my day and age, you didn't tell anybody, you didn't tell a parent you didn't tell, an adult to stop.
It's so fun. My grandchildren do that to me now.
Yes.
I mean, that's so cool. I mean, they're
Yes.
like, I will
Please don't do that.
I will be playing with them, throwing them around or whatever. And they're like, Pops, I don't like that. Okay. And then
Yes.
let's do something else, and I so enjoy that their parents are teaching them that.
Well, and they have to, which is sad. I mean, it's sad, but that's today's day
Not
and age.
with me.
Well, but aren't
I'm
you
safe?
aren't you?
No.
But this is what's so fun, though, is they're literally practicing it with you, someone
Yes.
that they
Oh, I'm
feel
just
safe
kidding,
with.
but yeah, exactly.
Someone that they feel like that they can say that to see how you're going to respond.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say is that, I mean, I love that point that if your parents' home is not a safe place for your children, then you're going to have to be there with your children.
And so often,
And I'm sorry that it's that way.
well, and it's very difficult sometimes to have the conversation with your mom or dad to say, I don't feel comfortable bringing my child over there. You don't always have to, force it and have it be some big conflict. You can kind of defer. You can kind of do things that, and sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to, when I take my child over there, I'm going to be there with them and not leave them alone and things like that. And it kind of depends on the severity of it. But, really in all that, trying to see it from the perspective of your mom and dad and trying to honor them as you do it, when you as you also balance it with protecting your child and protecting the influences on your child. And, I tend to think when it comes to like, sugar or something like that, you need to be a little bit more flexible and try harder. When it comes to anger and immorality and things like that, those are things you need to be a little bit firmer on. Maybe it's because I don't care about sugar as much, so
because you're an addict.
Maybe that's a
But
personal
I just had a
preference.
perfect example. So I love my mom. She is the most incredible person, and I'm so sad that she can't meet my grandchildren. She's passed away. We can't remember, 20 years ago. I mean, a long time. But I loved her. She was amazing. She did such special things. She did such a good job of treating everybody in her presence special. I mean, and especially my grandchildren and her grandchildren, and the people that my girls that remember her have story after story for her. But my kids did not spend the night with her very often. And if they did, they had a cousin or two or a sibling with them when they were much older, because my mom liked happy hour and she would have a drink or two in the evening. And I did not feel comfortable having my kids there in the evening with her. And so we figured out a way to do that. So it was a safe place for them. They could still hang out with her. They still had the relationship, but it was under my terms. And so I just want to, encourage you to, yes, do what it takes to have the relationship, but we give you and give yourself full permission to protect your children in any way they need to be protected in the environment that they're going to be in.
So for parents, we've talked about grandparents. For a parent, we're talking about parents now. Try to have some flexibility. We talked about the grandparents. Get it there. It's okay that there's a little bit more freedom at Yaya and Pops's house. It's okay. That needs to be a place. That can be a place of fun. It can be a place of, and we also talked about having conversations about expectations. And Suzanne, what you said was a lot of times your parents really do want to work with you if you're not being too much of a jerk about it.
Right.
So try to realize it from their perspective, see what, I was reading a book the other day. It said, see what life is like on the other side of you. You know, to think about what your parents, from their perspective are seeing, and how do you still honor them while you protect your child?
Yes.
And if you go into it like that, again, we're not going to help you eliminate every conflict that's going to happen in all of these areas, but it can help minimize those and create an environment. And so back to grandparents. We are grandparents now, and we are applying all the things we've been teaching parents for 20 years about relationships and culture. And so as grandparents, we want you to go into that. And as parents too, it's just another relationship.
Right.
How are you going to listen? How are you going to encourage your parents in their grandparenting role? How are you going to have them help you discipline your kids? How are you going to build unity, because there's going to be different values in there? All of this comes into play in the parent-grandparent role. And our goal is that you just have unity, just like we want you to have unity with your family and great relationships.
Yes. Yes, I love that.
So, wrapping it up, just hopefully, and the summer's coming. Great times to have more flexibility to go see grandma and grandpa.
Yes,
yeah, exactly. To go
leave
see
your
them.
kids there for a week or two. Be great.
Yeah, and hopefully you have great relationships with your grandparents, with your parents, that you can trust them and totally trust them to honor your goals, as well as grandparents. I hope you have great relationships with your kids, and you get the joy of being able to invest in your grandkids. So with all that, go be crazy. Go be crazy parents and grandparents. crazycoolfamily.com.